Peter had quietly been gathering little things for Will over the past few days, a soft blanket, a set of crayons, even a storybook he thought Will would like. Each time he gave something, he did it gently, like it was no big deal, but Will's shy smile showed how much it meant. At the start of camp, Will leaned heavily on Mark for comfort, almost afraid to do anything on his own. But as the days passed, something began to change. With Peter's steady patience and small gifts, and the warm encouragement from Liam and Sam, Will started to come out of his shell. He was still shy, his voice soft whenever he asked for help, but he no longer clung to Mark's side the way he had that very first day. Instead, he'd glance toward Peter with a quiet kind of trust, and Peter would always be there, ready to listen, ready to reassure. Mark noticed the difference too. One afternoon, as they all sat around the craft table, he whispered to Sam, "He doesn't need me like before. He's finding his own way." Sam smiled knowingly. That's what camp is for. He's learning he doesn't have to be alone, and he doesn't have to be afraid to lean on others. Will, hearing only pieces of their conversation, hugged the blanket Peter had given him. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he belonged here, not just as the shy boy from the first day, but as someone who could grow, laugh, and trust. Sam leaned back in his chair, lowering his voice so the younger campers wouldn't overhear. "Color War is in 2 days. Normally, I never choose a first-year camper as captain, let alone general. But this year, I'm making Peter the captain, and Will his general. What do you think?" Mark blinked in surprise. "Will? My brother." He shook his head, almost laughing. "He's gonna hate it at first. You know how shy he still is. But..." He glanced across the cabin where Will was sitting on the floor with Peter, carefully stacking blocks, his face calm and focused in a way that was rare when he first arrived. "So far, you and your team have helped him more than I could have imagined. I think it'll be great for him." "Yes." Sam gave a small smile. "Good. And just so you know, it was Peter who recommended him. He believes in Will's courage more than Will does himself." Mark's eyebrows lifted. "Peter did." He said Will has something special, a quiet kind of leadership. Not loud, not pushy, just steady. That's what the camp needs." Mark's chest tightened with a mix of pride and worry. Well, if Peter sees it, then maybe Will can too. Everyone on staff knew the plan. The other campers had no idea. For now, it was a secret waiting to unfold, one that would push Will out of his comfort zone and show him just how far he'd come since that very first shy day at camp. Will sat at the dining table, quietly spooning food into his mouth, his blanket draped over his lap like always. He was focused on his meal, barely noticing the way Peter slipped away and crossed the room toward Mark and Sam. Peter lowered his voice. "So, what's the news? You called me over." Sam glanced at Mark, then back at Peter, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, Mark's in. He agrees. Will's the right choice." Peter's eyes lit up, though he kept his excitement in check. "So it's official then? He'll be my general." Mark nodded slowly, his voice a mix of doubt and pride. "He doesn't know yet, and honestly, he's gonna freak out at first. But I trust you, Peter. You've been good for him. Better than I ever expected." Peter glanced over at Will, who was still eating quietly, unaware of the hushed conversation. "He's stronger than he thinks," Peter said softly. "When the moment comes, I'll make sure he sees it too." Sam folded his arms, nodding with finality. "Good. Then it's settled. Color War in 2 days. And the camp will see a side of Will no one expects, not even him." The three of them shared a knowing look, while across the room Will kept eating, completely unaware that his world at camp was about to change. Will shifted in his seat, his cheeks flushing pink. He fidgeted, trying to hide what had happened, but Peter and Mark knew right away from the look on his face. Peter touched Mark's shoulder, speaking gently. "I've got to go, but keep me in the loop, okay? I'll help your brother however I can." Mark nodded gratefully. "Yeah. Just be there for him." He needs you. Sam, who had been watching quietly, stepped closer and spoke in a calm, steady tone. On the first day, you leaned on Peter for almost everything. But now, Will, you've grown enough to start trusting others too. That's what this camp is about, learning that you're not alone. Will kept his head low, embarrassed, but Sam crouched so he could look him in the eyes. How do you feel about that? Mark answered first, protective as always. As long as Will is clean and happy, I'm good. That's all I care about. Sam smiled softly, then looked to Peter. Peter nodded back, his voice full of quiet promise. I'll make sure of it. No matter what. Will hugged his blanket tighter, feeling the safety of the three of them around him. For the first time, even in his shy, vulnerable state, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could let others help too. Will curled up on his bunk, holding his stomach with a little groan. His voice was small, almost like a whisper. I have a bad stomach ache. Peter immediately set aside what he was doing and came over. He smoothed Will's hair back and crouched down so they were eye to eye. Still getting used to camp food, huh? He said softly, trying to lighten the mood. Will gave a faint nod, cheeks a little pale. Peter didn't waste time, he got everything ready. A fresh change of clothes laid neatly on the chair, wipes within reach, and Will's favorite blanket folded nearby. He even poured a cup of water from the jug, setting it on the table next to the bunk. There we go, Peter said gently. Everything's ready, so you don't need to worry. Just rest and let me take care of you. Will sighed and leaned into the pillow, letting out a tiny thanks. Peter smiled, brushing his hand reassuringly across Will's shoulder. That's what I'm here for. We'll get you through this. Tomorrow, you'll feel better. Outside, camp buzzed with laughter and games, but inside the bunk it was just the two of them. Peter's steady presence wrapping Will in calm, even when his stomach wasn't. The cabin was quiet, most of the campers already asleep. Only the crickets outside and the soft creak of the wooden bunks filled the silence. Peter stayed close by Will's bed, watching as the boy shifted restlessly under his blanket, still holding his stomach. Easy, buddy, Peter whispered. He quietly reached into the cabinet where the camp kept supplies and grabbed 2 diapers, setting them nearby just in case. He worked calmly, his movements steady, not making a big deal of it. I've got everything we'll need tonight. You just rest. Will peeked up at him, eyes tired. You don't mind. Peter shook his head, giving him a gentle smile. Not at all. This is what I'm here for, helping you feel safe and clean. He tucked the blanket around Will's shoulders, then sat on the edge of the bunk. Besides, he added softly, tomorrow's a big day. Will frowned a little. Why? Peter's eyes twinkled. Because you need to be ready for color war. Will blinked, confusion on his face. What's that? It's like. Peter leaned closer, his voice dropping as though he were letting Will in on a secret. An all-day camp event. Every activity, games, challenges, even campfire stuff, becomes part of the competition. It goes for a full 24 hours. The whole camp splits into teams, and everyone works together. Will's mouth opened slightly. That sounds huge. Peter chuckled softly and brushed Will's hair back from his forehead. It is. But don't worry, you won't be alone. I'll be with you. Always. Will hesitated, then whispered, even if I mess up? Peter gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. Especially then. Will's eyelids grew heavier, comfort washing over him. He relaxed into the blanket while Peter sat nearby, keeping watch. For Will, the thought of color war was still mysterious and a little scary, but knowing Peter would be there made it feel just a little less overwhelming. The cabin was dim, only a lantern on the far table casting a golden glow. Most of the other campers were already asleep. Peter sat nearby, keeping half an ear open just in case Will stirred. A faint voice broke the quiet. Crap. I messed again. Will's face was red as he whispered it, clutching his blanket like he wished it could swallow him up. Peter was at his side in an instant, voice low and calm. "Don't worry, I got you, buddy." He gave Will's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "It's the last change for the night, then you can sleep easy." He moved smoothly, pulling out the clean diaper and wipes he'd set aside earlier. His tone stayed light, like it was no big deal at all. "Happens to everyone here sometimes. That's why I'm here, to take care of you." Will sighed, a mix of embarrassment and relief. "Sorry." Peter shook his head with a small smile. "Nothing to be sorry about. You're safe. You're cared for. That's all that matters." Once Will was cleaned up, Peter tucked the blanket snug around him and brushed the hair back from his forehead. "There we go. Fresh, clean, and ready for sleep. Tomorrow's a big day, you'll want to be rested." Will's eyes fluttered shut, his lips murmuring a quiet thanks. Peter stayed for a few minutes longer, watching until Will's breathing slowed and evened out, before finally settling in himself. The camp might be buzzing with anticipation for color war, but in that moment, the only thing that mattered was that Will felt safe, cared for, and ready for the day to come. The dining hall was quiet, just the soft echo of footsteps on the wooden floor. Will was awake early, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and Peter was already there, waiting with a calm, encouraging smile. They weren't the only ones. At the long tables, another pair had quietly arrived, a female camper and her buddy, both first-years like Will, though neither of them fully knew what was about to happen. Their eyes widened when they saw Peter and Will, whispering back and forth in confusion. Peter leaned down toward Will and whispered, "Looks like we're not the only ones chosen. That's your fellow team leaders. Everyone else still has no clue what's going on." Will's stomach fluttered, not with the morning nerves he sometimes had, but with a mix of excitement and worry. "They don't know yet." Peter shook his head, grinning softly. "Not a single camper. It's our little secret until Sam makes the official announcement. For now, just act normal. Smile, be polite, and stick with me. You got this, General." Will swallowed hard but nodded. He tugged at his blanket a little, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. "Okay. I'll try." The female camper and her buddy glanced between each other, whispering and glancing at Will and Peter, curiosity written all over their faces. For the moment, none of them realized that a special day, full of challenges, teamwork, and camp-wide excitement, was about to begin. Peter placed a reassuring hand on Will's shoulder. "Remember, no matter what happens today, we stick together. That's how we win, not by rushing, but by trusting each other." Will took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Color war might be a big, mysterious day, but with Peter by his side, he felt ready to face breakfast. But a hush fell as Sam stepped between Peter and the female camper, Dana. "Will, Beth," Sam began, his voice steady but full of energy, "I don't usually do this for first-year campers. I don't usually make first-years captains or generals. But this year, you too. You're going to face your first big challenge at Camp Toby." Will's eyes widened, and Beth's jaw dropped slightly. Both of them exchanged nervous glances. Sam smiled, sensing their mixture of excitement and worry. "For now, I want you to start thinking about team names. Make them something fun, something your whole team can rally behind." Dana whispered quickly to Beth, We get to choose first." Beth nodded, still a little stunned. "I guess so." Sam clapped his hands lightly. "All right. Dana and Beth, your team name will be White Founder." He pointed to Peter and Will with a grin. "And Peter and Will, you two are now in charge of the Red Ducks." Peter glanced at Will, trying to hide his smile. "Red Ducks," he repeated softly, like testing the name on his tongue. Will blushed but nodded. "Red Ducks," he murmured. I like it." The other campers glanced at them curiously, not fully understanding the weight of the announcement yet. For Will and Beth, it was a mix of pride and nervousness, their first real leadership role at camp. Peter leaned closer to Will, whispering, "See? You're already doing great. Let's make Red Ducks the best team ever." Together. Will's stomach fluttered again, but this time it wasn't from nerves, it was from excitement. For the first time at Camp Toby, he wasn't just a camper, he was a leader. The camp gathered outside by the lake, the morning sun sparkling on the water. All the campers were buzzing with energy, still wrapping their heads around the big announcement. First-year campers as captains and generals. Peter stood proudly beside Will, who clutched his blanket around his shoulders, shifting nervously as the rest of the red ducks, about a dozen campers, formed a circle around them. Some of the kids looked excited, others confused. Peter gave Will a gentle nudge. "They're your team now, General. Go on, say hi." Will swallowed hard, his cheeks pink. Hi. I'm Will. I guess I'm your general." He looked down, fidgeting with the blanket, before glancing up again. "We're the Red Ducks." One of the campers giggled. "Red Ducks? That's funny." Will managed a shy smile. "Yeah. But ducks stick together. And they're stronger than they look." That seemed to click, and a few campers nodded. Peter beamed. Just then, Sam's voice rang out from the dock. "All right, Camp Toby. Your first color war challenge is about to begin." The crowd cheered. Each team must search the shoreline and find 3 items that could help you if you were stranded at sea. Think quick, work together, and bring them back to me. First team to gather all 3 wins this round. The Red Ducks glanced around at each other, then back at Will. For a moment, he froze, so many eyes waiting on him. Peter leaned in. "What do you think, General? What should we look for first?" Will's heart pounded, but he took a breath. We should split into groups. One team check for wood, like for floating. Another for rope or string. And the rest. Anything we can carry water in." "Good call," Peter said, giving him an approving nod. "You heard him. Ducks, move out." The campers scattered along the shore, searching through reeds, rocks, and driftwood. For the first time, Will wasn't just following, he was leading. And though his voice was quiet, the Red Ducks listened. When one camper came running back with a big piece of driftwood, Will's eyes lit up. "Yes. That's perfect." His voice carried stronger this time, and the whole team cheered. The color war had only just begun, but Will was already finding his place, not just as the shy new camper, but as a general guiding his flock of ducks through the waves. The Red Ducks rushed back toward the dock with their finds, driftwood, a length of rope, and an old plastic jug. Excitement buzzed in the air, but Will's chest tightened. All those campers looking at him, waiting for him to say what to do next, it was too much, too fast. His breaths came short and shallow. He tugged at his blanket with trembling hands, eyes darting around. "What if I mess this up? What if they laugh? What if I ruin everything?" Peter noticed right away. He knelt beside Will's chair and, without making a scene, tilted it back just slightly, easing the pressure on Will's body and letting him breathe easier. His voice was calm, steady, just for Will. "Hey. It's a lot, I know," Peter said softly. "But you've got this. Look at me, not the crowd. Just me." Will's eyes locked onto Peter's, his breathing shaky but slowing as he focused. "See." Peter smiled. "The team already trusts you. You gave them good directions. You don't have to shout or be loud. Just be you. That's enough." Will swallowed hard, then gave the faintest nod. His voice was still small, but steady now. "Okay. Let's tell Sam we're done." Peter squeezed his shoulder. "There you go. General Will in action." Together, they turned back to the cheering Red Ducks, and though Will's cheeks stayed pink, his heart beat a little steadier. He wasn't alone, Peter had his back, always. Sam raised his hand, calling for quiet. "All right, teams, bring your finds up front." The white founders hurried in first, dropping a coil of rope, some small sticks, and a cracked tin can onto the table. Sam nodded approvingly. But then the Red Ducks came running, led by Peter pushing Will's chair, the rest of the campers cheering around them. They set down their haul, a thick piece of driftwood, a sturdy length of rope, and a jug that could hold water. Sam clapped his hands. And that is exactly what I was hoping to see. Smart thinking, Red Ducks, you win the first challenge. The Red Ducks erupted into cheers, kids jumping up and down, chanting Red Ducks. Red Ducks. Will's face glowed pink with pride, though he tucked his chin down shyly. Peter leaned close, whispering, "See? You did it. They're cheering because of you." On the other side, Beth crossed her arms but smiled with determination. "All right," she said loudly, her voice strong. "You got the first one, Ducks. But let the next game begin." Just then, one of the white founders tugged at her sleeve. "Beth, let's go. Dana wants you to come with her. She says it's important." Beth hesitated, then nodded firmly. "Okay. But when I get back, we're taking the next round." She followed her buddy Dana toward the edge of the field, already whispering strategy. Sam chuckled, turning back to the groups. "Teams, rest up. Next challenge starts soon, and it's going to test not just your brains, but your teamwork." The Red Ducks huddled close, still buzzing from their win, while Will tried to steady his excitement. For the first time, he wasn't just a shy boy in camp, he was leading a team. The Red Ducks were still buzzing from their first win when Peter wheeled Will a little ways off to the side, giving him some breathing room before the next challenge. "You all good?" Peter asked gently, crouching down so he was eye level with Will. Will shifted uncomfortably in his chair, cheeks flushing. I just need to change. And my stomach is being an ass again." He grumbled, hugging his blanket tighter. Peter gave him a sympathetic look. "Yeah, I figured as much. That's why I asked. Better to handle it now than let it get worse." He paused for a moment, lowering his voice. "Actually, Will, I need to talk with you and Mark about this. Do you mind if he joins us?" Will hesitated, chewing his lip. Normally, he hated anyone else being brought into his business. But Mark wasn't just anyone, he was his brother. And with Peter there, it didn't feel quite so scary. "No, it's fine," Will said softly. "Go get him." Peter gave a reassuring smile and squeezed his shoulder. "All right. Stay put, buddy. I'll be right back." As Peter headed off to find Mark, Will leaned back in his chair, letting out a shaky breath. The cheers of the Red Ducks still echoed in the background, but for him, the world had gone quiet for a moment. He was nervous about the talk, but also strangely relieved. Maybe, just maybe, it would help. Peter found Mark near the edge of the field, chatting with a counselor. He motioned him aside, his expression calm but serious. "Mark, can we talk with Will for a minute?" Peter asked quietly. "It's nothing bad, but you need to know, since I won't be around after camp." "You will." Mark's face tightened. "What's going on? Is he okay?" Peter placed a hand on his shoulder. "He's fine. Just stomach troubles again. And, some accidents. I've been helping him through it, but this isn't just a camp thing. It's something you'll need to keep in mind when you're back home together." Mark frowned, looking past Peter to where Will sat, fiddling nervously with his blanket. "Yeah. I kinda guessed. He's been leaning on you a lot." Peter nodded. "And that's okay. But he needs to know he can lean on you too. If you don't step in, he'll carry the shame by himself, and that's not fair." Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't always know what to do. I'm not as calm as you." "You don't have to be me," Peter said gently. "You just have to be there. Remind him he's safe, that he's loved, even when it's messy. Especially then." Mark swallowed hard, then nodded. "All right. Yeah, I can do that." Together, they walked back to Will. He looked up at them nervously, but Peter smiled to reassure him. "It's all good, buddy. Just a quick talk. We've got your back, both of us." Will's shoulders sagged with relief. For the first time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to carry everything alone when camp ended. The bunk was dim and calm, the chatter of the other campers far away at the fire circle. Will lay on his side under his blanket, worn out from the day. His stomach still felt unsettled, and he hated it. Peter pulled a chair close, his voice low and steady. "Mark, Will. There's something we need to talk about. Every time I've changed you this week, Will, you've been having diarrhea and stomach issues. I don't want you spending all your camp days stuck in here instead of having fun." Will's cheeks went hot, and he tugged the blanket higher. Sorry." Peter shook his head quickly. "No sorries, buddy. It's not your fault. That's why I'm thinking. To help you for the rest of camp, we'll cut out meat from your meals. Just fruits, veggies, grains, the gentler stuff. It might calm things down." Mark leaned against the bedpost, arms crossed but his expression soft. "Honestly, it's the same at home. Not this bad, but yeah. His stomach's touchy. Mom just says he has to be careful." Will peeked out from the blanket, his voice shaky. "So basically, I might have to be vegetarian? Or vegan?" He let out a frustrated groan. No, this isn't fair." Peter leaned down, brushing Will's hair back. "It's not about taking things away from you, Will. It's about giving you the chance to enjoy camp without being in pain. We'll try it for this week. If it helps, great. If not, we'll figure something else out together." Mark added, softer than usual, "And it doesn't mean you can't ever have meat again, little bro. Just means we have to pay attention to what works best for you." Will stared at both of them, torn between frustration and relief. I don't want to be different." Peter gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You're not different. You're Will. And we're just making sure you feel good enough to laugh, play, and lead those red ducks like you did today." That made Will's lips twitch into the faintest smile, though his eyes were still watery. "Okay. I'll try. But only 'cause you both promised it's not forever." Peter nodded. "Deal." Mark ruffled his hair. "And if it helps, I'll skip meat this week too. You won't be the only one." That earned a quiet giggle from Will, the tension easing at last. For now, the cabin was filled with nothing but soft trust and the promise of a better tomorrow. The campfire crackled high as the last Color War challenge wrapped up. Excitement buzzed around, but there was a shift in the Red Ducks lineup. On the stage, Ed stood tall with his buddy Aaron at his side. His voice carried strong and steady. "Since Will isn't 100% right now, I'm Ed, and this is my buddy Aaron. We're here tonight as replacements for our Captain Will and our General Peter. Even if they aren't up here with us, they know we can finish this fight without them. Because they've had our backs all day, and we'll always have theirs." The crowd of campers cheered, stomping their feet on the benches. Will, sitting just off to the side with Peter at his shoulder, felt his chest ache and swell all at once. Hearing it out loud, he was missed, but he was still part of them. Peter leaned closer with a grin. "See that, Will? Our team's got US. That's pretty cool." Will's lips curled into a shy but proud smile. "Yeah. It's more than cool. It's amazing. Even when I'm not out there, they still see me." Peter nodded, giving his hand a squeeze. "That's what being a leader really means. You started something they believe in. And that's never gone, buddy." Will let out a small breath, shoulders relaxing. "Guess the Red Ducks don't need me to be perfect. Just me." Sam rolled into the bunk later that night, the soft hum of his wheelchair filling the quiet. He found Will curled under his blanket, eyes half open but awake. "You good, Will?" Sam asked gently. Will shrugged. "A bit better." "Who told you?" "Mark did," Sam said, easing closer. "But you know it's a trial run with no meat, right? Just to see how your stomach does." Will let out a long breath. "Yeah, I guess." Sam's tone softened. "By the way, your team won Color War. Congratulations." Will blinked, his voice small. But I was apart for a bit. I wasn't even out there at the end. Sam shook his head. Yeah, but you let your team help you. You weren't trying to control everything or hide when you needed care. You weren't you weren't a jerk about it. His smile was wry. That's leadership too, you know. Will glanced up at him, hesitant. Even though I dropped out. Especially because you trusted others to step in, Sam said firmly. That's what real captains do. It's not about being out front all the time, it's about making sure your people can shine too. Will was quiet for a moment, then finally whispered, Thanks, Sam. Sam patted the side of his bunk before turning his chair toward the door. Rest up, Red Duck. You earned it. Will's chest felt warm as he rolled onto his side. For the first time, he didn't just feel like a camper surviving camp, he felt like someone who belonged. The campgrounds buzzed with goodbyes, the crunch of gravel underfoot, and the thump of bags being tossed into vans. Mark hefted his and Will's duffels into the back of their family van, wiping the sweat from his brow. Before climbing in, Will wheeled himself over to Peter and Sam, his eyes a little watery. Without hesitation, he leaned forward and wrapped his arms around Peter in a tight hug. Then he shifted, reaching for Sam too, who bent down from his chair so Will could hold him just as firmly. Peter. How did you even know? Will asked softly, pulling back just enough to look him in the eyes. Peter smiled, brushing his hair out of his face. Easy. Your body doesn't handle meat too well, and this week, you ate more than normal. I just connected the dots. Will blinked, surprised. So simple. Peter grinned. Sometimes the answer is. Sam rested a hand on Will's shoulder. You trusted us enough to listen. That's what matters. Will's throat tightened, but he managed a small smile. Sam. Tell your family I said thanks, okay? For making this camp feel like home. Sam's voice softened. I will. And remember, you'll always have a place here. Red Ducks forever. Mark honked the van horn lightly. Come on, little brother. Time to hit the road. Will gave Peter and Sam one last wave before letting Mark help him up the ramp. As the van door slid shut, he held on to the warmth of their words, knowing this wasn't just the end of camp, it was the start of carrying that trust back home. The van hummed along the winding camp road, trees blurring past the windows. Will leaned back in his seat, still processing everything that had happened over the week. Mark glanced over from the driver's side, his voice calm but firm. By the way, I already told Mom and Dad about your new diet plan. They get it. No big deal. Will raised his brows. Really? You already told them? Yeah, Mark said with a small grin. You don't have to fight that battle alone. And Peter said he'll check in from time to time, just to make sure things are going smooth. That made Will smile, shy but relieved. Guess I'm not off the hook, huh? Nope, Mark chuckled. Then he reached into a container by his seat, plucked out a few grapes, and set them gently onto the tray clipped to Will's chair. Now eat these while I drive. Keep your stomach happy. Will popped one into his mouth, savoring the sweetness. You sound just like Peter. Mark smirked, eyes on the road. Good. That means I'm doing it right. Will laughed softly, a sound that made the whole van feel lighter. For the first time, the road home didn't seem so heavy. The van rolled into the driveway, the familiar sights of home welcoming them back. Will's mum and dad were waiting by the porch, bags in hand and smiles on their faces. Mark helped Will out of the van and guided him toward the house. One day a week of meat, Mum, Mark said, glancing back at Will with a small grin. Will's dad raised an eyebrow. He still needs protein. Are you sure that's enough? Mark shrugged. Nuts, beans, grains. And this is all new for me and Will too. We'll make it work. It's about what's best for him. Will looked up at his parents, cheeks flushed but smiling shyly. I think it'll be okay, he whispered. His mum knelt down, brushing his hair back gently. We trust you too. And it looks like camp really helped you, Will. You handled so much this week. His dad nodded, ruffling his hair. Yeah. You've grown a lot, more confident, more yourself. That's what matters most. Will's chest warmed at their words. For the first time, he felt like the lessons from camp, trusting others, leaning on people who care, even handling his stomach troubles, weren't just for camp. They could be part of home too. Mark gave him a small squeeze on the shoulder. See? You've got this. And I'll be here to make sure we stick to the plan together. Will smiled, finally feeling that same calm he'd had at camp, surrounded by people who had his back. A few weeks after camp, Will's mornings had a new rhythm. He sat at the kitchen table, a tray of fresh fruit and nuts before him, quietly enjoying breakfast. His parents moved around the room, chatting softly, while Mark poured himself a cup of coffee nearby. The phone buzzed. Mark glanced down. Peter was calling. He answered quickly. Hey, Peter. How's he doing? Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. Honestly. He almost slipped into his old habits with Mum this morning. But Dad stayed strong on Will's new plan. No meat except the day we agreed on, plenty of gentle foods, and we're sticking to it. Will's doing surprisingly well. Peter chuckled softly on the other end. Good. That's all I wanted to hear. Proud of you both for keeping him on track. Mark smiled, glancing over at Will, who was carefully cracking a nut for his breakfast. He's thriving, really. Confident, calmer, and he's even starting to take the lead on little things himself, like choosing meals, asking for what he needs. Camp really changed him. Peter's voice softened. That's exactly what I hoped. Just keep showing him he's got support, and he'll keep growing. Will looked up at the sound of Mark talking and offered a small, shy smile. Even weeks after camp, he felt the same security, the same calm confidence he had learned there. He didn't have to be perfect, he just had to trust the people who cared, and trust himself. Mark hung up the phone and ruffled Will's hair. See? Everything's gonna be fine. You got this, buddy. Will nodded, taking another bite of his fruit, feeling proud, not just of following the diet plan, but of how far he had come in learning to lean on others and trust himself. For the first time, home felt just as safe and empowering as camp had. Weeks later. Morning call. Will's phone buzzed as he dialed Peter. Hey. Just a weekday today. My stomach's acting up. Peter's voice came instantly, calm and encouraging. No worries, buddy. Take it slow. Sip some water and rest, you've got this. Snack check. At home, Mark set a tray of fresh fruit and nuts in front of him. Here, start with these. Remember, today's one of the no-meat days, but you're still strong. Will smiled, feeling cared for without shame. Small victories. Later, Will carefully prepped his own breakfast, cracking nuts, spreading peanut butter, and choosing his fruit. Look, I did it myself, he called to Mark. Mark grinned. See? That's confidence right there. Evening call. Feeling drained after a school day, Will dialed Peter again. I feel a little off. Peter's reassurance was steady. It's okay. Listen to your body. Rest, and tomorrow's another chance to show your strength. Quiet pride. Each no-meat day passed with small successes, Will learning to pace himself, ask for help, and trust his plan. By the end of the week, he even called Mark without prompting. I think I can handle this one on my own today. Mark laughed softly. That's the red duck spirit, buddy. Weeks after camp, Will wasn't just following a diet, he was thriving, confident in his body, and secure knowing Peter and Mark were always there, just a call away when he needed them. And as Will settled into bed that night, a soft smile on his face, he realized something. He didn't have to be perfect, he didn't have to face life alone, and with Peter, Mark, and the lessons from Camp Toby behind him, he could handle whatever came next, one day, one choice, one small victory at a time.